because they wanted to get the gold out of the walls. Some parts of Jerusalem they left standing because they wanted everyone to see how great of a city it was that the Romans destroyed. So Christ tells about the destruction of the temple. Everyone's looking around the temple, the gifts, the gold, the gems, and Christ says it's all going to be destroyed. It's all going to come down. Not a single stone is going to be left on top of another. It's all going to be destroyed. So is this a text about giving? How could this text be about giving? Right? But what's Christ saying about the widow? Is he saying, okay, the temple's going to be destroyed, but before it's destroyed, make sure to put in your offering real quick? That makes no sense whatsoever. So I would say this text is not about giving primarily. It's about this religious system, this external, false religious system. Look at how it plays out. See, people look at the scribes and think that they're so magnificent. People look at the rich bringing in their gifts and they think that's so magnificent. They look at the beauty of the temple, the gold and the gems, and all the design and decor of it, and they think that that's amazing. What we learn is that all this is externality. Man only has the ability to notice what is external, but that might not be what reality is. So, for example, the scribes, people saw them as these great, holy people, but Jesus tells us what was true about them. They just were in it for themselves. They loved the glory and honor that came with their profession, but inwardly they were wicked. Secretly they were devouring and preying on, taking advantage of the most vulnerable people in society. Is that so hard to imagine? That's not hard to imagine at all. Not in the city, not in the world that we live in, that kind of stuff happens. It happened in Jesus' day. It happens in our day. So people saw scribes one way. Jesus tells us the truth about them. People looked at the rich men giving their gifts. You think the rich are doing great, generous giving, but Christ looks at the widow and says that she's put in more than all of them. Don't be fooled by appearances. Finally, we see the temple's adornments, and the disciples looking around at the temple, at the gold, at the precious stones. But Christ says it's all going to be destroyed. It's all going to be destroyed. It's all going to come crashing down. All the externality is going to be gone. The poor widow is possibly one who is being devoured by the religious class. So I don't believe the point of this passage is giving. Here's why. A couple reasons why I don't think this has to do with giving. Because none of that money went to Jesus, right? The 2 coins that she casts in, it doesn't go to Jesus. It went to support a false religious system that Christ condemns over and over and over again. Show me where Christ said anything good about the religious system in the New Testament. Absolutely nothing. So how could this be a passage about giving? The money that's collected by the temple would later be used to fund the trial and the execution of Jesus. Right? Where did the leaders of the temple get the 30 silver coins to pay Judas? Where did they get the money to hire the false witnesses to testify against Christ? Where did they get the money to tell the Roman guards that the disciples came and stole away the body? The money of the temple went to fund the trial and the execution and the cover-up of the resurrection. Jesus never commends this woman or notes her faith. He just notes that she has given more than all of them. It's all an illusion. The context here is one of strong criticism against the temple and the Jewish religious system. The temple's going to be destroyed, so why would Jesus be concerned about giving money to the temple? The temple was a false religious system that had completely strayed from the purposes that God had for it. Remember, when Christ rides into Jerusalem and he's driving out the money changers and the people who are buying and selling, what does he say? He says, "It is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you have made it" what? Den of thieves. Has Jesus had anything nice to say about the temple? No, you won't find it in Scripture. The temple is going to be destroyed. God's judgment is going to come upon that false religious system. It was supposed to be a place of worship, a place of healing, a place of justice, a place of restoration, a place of teaching, a place of salvation. A place where people drew close to God and God's light went forth to the people. But the temple had failed in this purpose, and therefore it was inviting God's judgment upon it. No matter how glorious it looked externally, the religious system was wicked inwardly. Often, there's application. Often church can become like this. Corporately and to us as individuals, church can become like this. Church is the place where people put on the greatest show. Why? Because we create a standard by which we judge each other. We want people to think well of us. We want people to look at us and think that we have it all together. Church often becomes so religious that you cannot see the gospel in it. The truth is that religion and the gospel will always collide. Because the gospel is about our badness, our sinfulness, our brokenness, and God's love for us in it, and his sufficiency to save us from it. The gospel banks our hopes on what Christ did for us in his life, his death, and his resurrection, not on what we do. Religion is about our abilities, our efforts, our sincerities, our choice to be acceptable before God, and we think that he saves us in response to the sincerity of our effort. God will see how hard I'm trying, and that will be acceptable. Wrong. The gospel and religion collide because they are opposed. They say two very different things. The problem is in church that oftentimes we try to live in accordance with both of them. We say that we believe in the gospel, which tells us that we're imperfect, broken sinners in need of salvation, and yet external religion permeates everything that we are about. And the two will not be reconciled. There's no way to believe in the gospel and be religious at the same time. The more religious you are, the more you diminish and invalidate the gospel. Look at the lies that some of us believe, myself included. We struggle to get past these. Sometimes we have this tendency to think that God does not love us exactly as we are, but he loves a future version of us. We clean up our act, we get right, we start doing the right things, talking the right way, dressing the right way, and then we will earn God's love. Wrong. The gospel says no. We sometimes believe that God helps those who help themselves. That once we muster up the courage and the willpower to start doing the right thing, then God will look at us and say, okay, this person is making an effort, they're sincere, now I'm going to restore, reconcile, heal, grace upon this person. Again, the gospel says no to that. The gospel is absolutely opposed to that. That's not Christianity. That is something else. And some of us live by that. We call that Christianity, and it's not. There's not two types of Christianity. A more works Christianity, and then a more grace Christianity. There's Christianity, and then there's something else, which is not Christianity. The gospel Sometimes we believe that the gospel is just what we believe in order to become a Christian, and then once you are a Christian, then you can become more religious in the way that you live. Absolutely wrong. The gospel is absolutely opposed to that. Reality for us, what I want us to understand from this message, is that all of us experience brokenness in our lives. All of us experience failure. All of us are sinful and have problems that get compounded, one on top of the other, if we're honest with ourselves. God is the God who sees all things and is completely aware of the truthfulness or the untruthfulness in our souls. Just like Christ saw the truth of the scribes. He saw the reality of what was going on with the offering. He saw what reality was of the external beauty of the temple. Often our perspective is not based on what God values. Our perspective is limited to earthly sufficiency. So we look at all this external stuff and we get caught up with it. And we want to be like that. Say, okay, I'm going to clean up my act and pretend like everything is good in my life. I'm not going to show any sin, not going to show any brokenness, not going to show any pain and hurt in my life. We live by earthly sufficiency. And we have a wrong perspective of what is right and valuable to God. And what that does is that it perverts how we think about the gospel. You see, we all start our Christian life believing in the gospel, believing in what Christ did for us, believing in the sufficiency of Christ, that it's not of our works, but all of His grace, and then somewhere along the line, we stray away from that and say, now I'm able to do. It's not the gospel. That's not Christianity. We struggle with having externality, but not a heart that draws near to God through the gospel. God is not satisfied with externality, but cares that we believe in the gospel, that our hearts are close to Him through what Christ did for us on our behalf. God made Him who knew no sin to become sin for us and suffer the penalty of sin on our behalf, that we might receive the righteousness of God in Him. We might be acceptable to God based on what Christ did for us, not ourselves. There's a collateral damage that is compounded in our lives and in the lives of others when we stray away from the gospel. So this morning, Christ invites us back. That temple that was destroyed, the amazing thing is that though the temple was destroyed, a person replaced the function of that temple. Christ becomes the place of reconciliation between us and God. Christ becomes the great high priest who offers himself and reconciles us to God. Christ becomes the final sacrifice who is offered to God on our behalf for our sins, that we might be reconciled to God. And so the gospel is totally Christ-centered, and through the gospel, Christ invites us back to himself over and over and over again. Let's close in a word of prayer. Lord God, we thank you for your goodness to us, the beauty and the preciousness and the sufficiency of the gospel. Lord, in our hearts, may we be strengthened by it, and receive the power to take that invitation in our hearts and believe the gospel. Even if we've believed it before, let me be renewed in it, Lord, and be restored to understand what it is, and that all the sufficiency is of what Christ did for us, and not we ourselves, Lord. Help us to understand pray that you call us back to yourself, restore us, reconcile us, heal us, Father. In our brokenness, may we find the gospel is all sufficient and all satisfying. I ask this all in Christ's name.